In March 2011, the world watched in awe and horror as a colossal tsunami ravaged eastern Japan. The result of a 9.0 magnitude earthquake. Entire cities were washed away. Millions stranded without power or water. 15,000 died. It was an otherworldly event, thousands of miles away. Thank goodness, many of us thought. It couldn't happen here. But it could happen here. In fact, scientists say it's a question of when, not if, a devastating earthquake, followed by a huge tsunami, strikes the continental United States, right here in the Pacific Northwest.
This would be like 5 or 6 Katrinas all at once, up and down from California to Canada would be the closest thing I can think of.
It may sound like a Hollywood disaster movie.
I see it!
But it's not. This is the future for the region's 7 million people, says Chris Goldfinger, a paleoseismologist at Oregon State University. In fact, his research shows much of the region is overdue for a major quake. The last one was back in 1700, long before there were large cities right in harm's way.
If it happens anytime soon, it would just devastate the area.
Goldfinger estimates there's a 1 in 3 chance the quake will strike sometime in the next 50 years.
Would you say that we're prepared for something like this?
We're not completely unprepared, but we're pretty darn close. On a scale of 1 to 10, we're probably a little shy of 1 at this point.
This is Ground Zero, the 700-mile-long area off the Pacific coast called the Cascadia Subduction Zone, where the North American tectonic plate meets another plate known as the Juan de Fuca.
The dark image we're seeing here is literally sliding under the lighter image.
That's right. So they're converging but still stuck. And so what happens is the weaker plate, which is North America, buckles. And eventually something's going to give. So the coastline that's been jacked up over 500-ish years or so is going to drop about a meter in about a minute or so.
And that's just the earthquake. Next, as we saw in Japan, comes a tsunami, with waves as high as 50 feet roaring on shore, reaching miles inland. It's a threat the government says it's taking seriously. But
Is FEMA ready for the big one?
I would never say we are ready.
Ken Murphy is the administrator for FEMA Region 10.
These represent the roads that can be affected by the earthquake, or out here on the coastline can be affected by the tsunami.
The agency has spent years preparing the federal response. FEMA's best-case scenario, 10,000 dead. And that's assuming no beach tourists, which would lead to their worst-case scenario, simply too terrifying to contemplate.
Depending on when it happens, we're talking numbers that this nation, I'm not sure, is really prepared to deal with.
Potentially the greatest natural disaster this country has ever experienced?
I would say it has the potential for that. This is an event you send everything to and scale back down if you don't need it.
The quake could displace 1 million people from Northern California to Southern Canada. Large parts of Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver will crumble. In coastal towns, roads and bridges will likely be impassable, stranding whole communities. The region's economy could collapse. Rebuilding might take years, even decades. As for Oregon State's Chris Goldfinger, he continues to warn about a disaster that science says is just a matter of time.
This is going to scare a lot of people.
Well, I don't think that's a bad thing. If you're really well prepared and the infrastructure is hardened, that can be the end of it. If you don't plan at all, it's going to be a catastrophe. And then There's just nothing you can do about that.